Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today we have an event that is sort of on a lot of parents' mind, and we wanted to do this event in a way so that you can get a lot of your question answered. So today we have a number of adult children of parental alienation who are here to share with you their story. People always kind of told me that I forget to introduce myself. So my name is Petra Dieter, and I am an adult child of parental alienation as well as a mother that is targeted for parental alienation. And today I have with me two other adult children. One is Kyle. Actually, we have three. Yeah, so Shah is joining us right now. So I have Kyle and Haley, and also Shah is coming on right now. Hi, Philip. I see you in the chat room. Hi, thank you. So we're gonna sort of go through and introduce each of your situation and then answer as many questions as we can. So, Haley, do you want to introduce yourself? Were you alienated from your mom or your dad? What's the situation? Let's just do like a quick introduction. Yeah.
So my situation is a little bit different. My name's Haley Murray. My brother was alienated from my mother, and I'm basically just trying to learn how to navigate that. My dad took my brother, and my mom hasn't seen him in almost a year. And a year before that, it was a lot of fighting and trying to understand who's right, what's wrong. And I was basically just in the middle of it.
And you originally were also like your dad tried to alienate you from your mother, but unsuccessfully, right?
Correct.
Right. So this is one of the situations that we also get a lot of questions from parents who ask us, can you interview somebody where a child actually recognized what happened and they stood up to it? So this is perfect. We have Haley to share this story. And then Kaya, what is your story?
So my story is I was alienated from my mother, from my grandma, from my mother by my grandma. So my dad's mom, she raised me and she did everything in her power to get me as far away from my mom as I could. And when I was 15, I decided to leave my grandma and live with my mom by myself. So yeah, here we are.
Okay. So Kaya's situation is that um, it's not that uncommon actually. A lot of the time, people think that the alienator is one of the parents, but sometimes the alienator can be someone else. It can be a grandparents. It can be somebody not in the family. Sometimes it could be a foster parent, but alienator is somebody that try to prevent or destroys the relationship between the child and the other parent. And in this case, for Kyle, that's your grandmother on your father or your mother's side.
My father's side.
Yeah, so the ex-husband's mother, the mother-in-law, is the one that trying to damage the relationship between the child and the mother. Shao, welcome. Hi, what is your
Hi.
situation?
Um, my situation started probably early on when my sister was born handicapped, and my father pretty much took over raising me. He began alienating me from my mother probably when I was about 5 years old. He had me going back and forth between my grandparents' house on his side on a plane because my sister was handicapped. Um, there were five of us. Two of us were alienated, me and my younger sister. Then I have my older sister that was bonded with my mom, my younger sister, another younger sister, and a younger brother that had bonded with my mom. But the two of us, me and my younger sister, the one right below me, my dad pretty much alienated us from my mom. Now is kind of a different circumstance because we all lived in the same home. So this was happening under my mother's nose and we despised her. So if like she spanked us or she hit us with a belt, we could grab the belt and we would say, "You're not our mom," because that's what he said. "She's really not your mom." And
Yes. So with Shah's situation, the alienation happening while they are still in the same home. So we have all sort of different situation here. I mean, with Haley, the situation is that she actually woke up to the alienation and stood up against that. With Kyle, he didn't know, and the alienator is actually the grandmother. With Sha, it's happening within the home, right? So all these different scenario, and I think it's very important for us to recognize that. And I want to say hello to Samantha in the room. We got Mario calling from Greece. We got Emma, thank you so much. And then we got Mary from and also Joe from Ireland. Thank you so much, everyone, for calling in. Okay, so that's a brief intro there. So we have actually all of these situations are alienation against the mother in this case. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of activities that was done to alienate you from your mother. So why don't we start with Kyle? Do you want to start, like, what kind of things that was said about your mother or done to make you reject your mother?
Well, things that were said to me, like, she doesn't care, she never cared, she only wants to live her life. My mother was very young too. She had me, she was 16. So having someone that was almost 50 years old say that about a teenager pretty much is pretty heavy. But yeah, saying stuff like this to make it seem like she never cared. My mother would call home and she would just pick up. I was in the bathroom. She'd say like, "Yeah, he's not home." So and then never tell me that she called at all. Um, she would reprehend me whenever I talked about my mother with a bit of love. And whenever I wanted to go there, she'd be like, "Well, you have no business there. What are you gonna do? What about your school and all those things?" So it's a bunch of obstacles that were put in my way, my mom and mine and my mom's way, right?
So there's multiple things that was going on there, right? There's one is this bad mouthing, saying that your mother doesn't care about you, that your mother is not a fit mother because she only care about living her life. So obviously she's not a good mother. And then there's prevention of contact, right? So when your mother call you, the grandmother would not tell you that she called, and then she would tell your mother that you're not available, right? So those that, and then when you did try to go to your mother, your grandmother would say, why would you go over there? And what about school, right? All these things that seems reasonable, right? You should be worried about school. But really, all of that is in an attempt to prevent you from going to your mother to have any kind of relationship, right? What about Haley? What about you? What kind of behaviors that we're trying to put on you to prevent you from having a relationship with your mother?
So, ever since I was little, my sister, she's 11 years older than me. She moved to San Antonio with my mom and my dad. And the second she got here, it was from my grandparents on my dad's side, immediate like bullying. And my sister didn't know why. And as a teenager, that hurt her feelings. So my mom tried to intervene, and my dad would just be like, "Oh, you have to ignore it." So he was already training her to be okay with bad behavior. So he started off with my sister. And as soon as my mom would discipline my sister, he would send my sister emails saying, "Oh, I know she's awful. Like, that was abusive. She shouldn't be allowed to do that." But all behind my mom's back. So my mom had no idea. So when my sister finally became of age, she moved out and stopped talking to my mom, and my mom had no idea. And then with me and my brother, they split up, and I didn't know why at the time. And I wasn't allowed to get a reason out of him. It was just, "Oh, I don't approve of the house she just moved into, so I'm moving out." And I was like, "Okay, well, I've seen a divorce coming. I've prepared myself for it, so I'm okay with it. But I don't understand that when I go over, everything is weird. I don't have the same relationship with him anymore." And I ask him about it, and I get blown off. It's like, don't ask about it. And then suddenly my dad started telling, like, my brother, or he would triangulate me and my brother. So one specific event, I was at the dinner table with my brother and my dad, and my brother had been awful to me all day for no reason. And as soon as we were done eating, Johnny picks up my plate all snarky, and my dad goes, "Aren't you gonna say thank you?" And I was like, "No, I'm not gonna say thank you. He's picking up my plate to please you, not to help me." And it was immediate, like, anger against my brother for doing that, not my dad, because he was the one that put us together. He put, like, it was an argument that he started almost. So it was little things like that, and trying to convince me that, "Oh, your mom's been abusive your whole life, you just don't remember it." Like, how do I not remember my mom, like, physically beating me? Like, it just slipped my mind, I guess. It was just stuff like that, like, little itty bitty things that he would try to, like, his seeds of doubt is what my mom calls them. And it would happen. My It happened to my brother very, very easily. He's just like my mom in the fact that he sees someone's emotion and wants to help them. So my dad goes, "Oh, your mom was so mean to me." And my brother's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't like, I'm sorry, I want to help you." But I see straight through my dad. I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like, ever since we were little, every time they had an argument, my dad would somehow flip it to the point where me and my brother were yelling at my mom. And I was maybe 10 years old, my brother was 7, and we were yelling at my mom for an argument that her and my dad had gone into. And that put me and my brother in a position over my mom, and, like, that was just not okay. And looking back, I can see a 2020 vision, you know?
Yeah, so with your situation, he did quite a lot of different things. So one of the things that she talked about is um, the normal parenting behaviors is now being distorted, right? Your mother disciplining your sister, but behind the scene, your father trying to tell your sister that that's abusive. So he distorting the normal parenting behaviors into something bad, and then he bad mouthing your mother and create false allegation, making you feel like she abused you, beat you up when you were small, but you don't remember it. But because if he keep repeating it over and over again, and he's your father, you kind of buy into that, right? And then he also put you in the middle of that conflict, the loyalty conflict. When he had a fight with your mother, he put you guys in the middle, so you took side, and you felt like you had to take side, so you took side of your father's side against your mother, right? And then I think
Correct.
there's some other things that you talk about. I just want to make sure that we cover all those. And then triangulation, like, because you was a golden child, but when you stood up against him, now you being forced against, because now he take your brother and him against you, and now you suddenly feel like, oh, this is what you get punished for standing up for your mother. If you don't
Correct.
follow me, then right. So all of those things, those are so there's a list of at least 17 alienating behaviors that Dr. Amy Baker listed out. We have done also more research into it, and we found even more behaviors that fall into all these different categories. And so a lot of this is applying right here. Sha, what about your situation? What was some of the alienating behavior that forced you to go against your mother?
Well, he talked about that my mom didn't know how to clean the house, that there were 5 of us, and she always had charts and things like that. And we had to earn, a day out with her. Okay. And he basically said to her, this is your home. You've got them, doing their own laundry. You've got them pulling the weeds. You've got this. And what are you doing? I mean, there were 5 of us, and age, you know, little up to, I was the second oldest. So from an infant clear up to my sister, which was 12, but really I was like I was the golden child. I was the one that was favored because
I'm sorry, hold on,
it,
hold on. I think my live video crashed. Can we just hold on for 1 second? I'm gonna start this again. Um, I'm so sorry because
you hear
people were
me?
complaining. Yeah, yeah. Just hold on. Let me restart this. I'm sorry. I think um yeah. I think what happened. Something happened with the audio, and then it just crashed. I'll start it again. Um, all right. All right, I'm gonna go live again. Hi everyone, welcome back. I am so sorry, I apologize. We had some technical problem and it crashed. So we're gonna come back now and I'm gonna just pick up from where we left off. So we have gone through and talked about the kind of alienating behaviors that was going on behind the closed doors at the alienator's home. Haley shared her story, and then we also have Kyle share his story, and now we were in the middle of sharing Shah's story about the alienating behaviors, and I apologize, so the thing just crashed. So okay, Shah, yeah, and welcome back. So Shah, go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. Primarily, I was the golden child because my sister, I was born shortly after my sister was diagnosed that she wasn't going to live longer than 2 years. Well, she's a year older, almost a year older than me. So pretty much I was the golden child. Everybody wanted me. Then my other siblings were born, 3 years and down. Pretty much my dad took me everywhere because my mom was busy with my sister. When I got older, he went out with young girls and I was part of the date. Pretty much I was the supervisor. So, what do you call it? I don't know what you call it, where a chaperone, I guess. I was 11-year-old chaperone. My dad, when we were out to eat and there were people at the restaurant that knew him because all three of my aunt, my uncles and grandfather, all of them had dental offices in the town that we were in. It was a very small town. So whenever we went out to eat, my dad called my mom names, and everybody in town knew what her nicknames were: Captain Hook, Sasquatch, and all these other names. But my dad talked to me about their sex life. He told me everything. And after I got years of counseling, that's when I found out I was actually his surrogate. But there were things that my mom would do. She would correct me and my dad would step in and he would say, before you go and correct her about this, you need to correct your own behavior. So it set up this thing with my sister as well, my younger sister. So he didn't do that with the other ones. It was just between me and her. And he took me on all these trips, and the other kids pretty much looked at me like, why does she get to go and none of us get to go? So it really did cause a lot of division, but I didn't notice it until I got older in life. And it was like, well, you were the prized possession, you got this, you got that. But I got a lot of counseling as a result of it. Things aren't good now, but it's heartbreaking because I missed out on so many years with my mom. And it wasn't until I was about 30 when my parents started going through a divorce. I tried to reconcile with my mom. And
Yeah, so with your case, so with Shah's case, it was a lot of different things. So he was cheating on her, and he was using you as a cover. He brought you along with these dates with these young women, so it looks legit because you were there as a child. And then at the same time, he was bad mouthing against your mother while they were still in a marriage, with all the people outside of the family in front of you, right? So he was calling your mother names, all these different names. So and in front of you, so you took on to that, and then he treated you so well, like he really spoil you. So you felt like you were special to him. So
yeah,
then, yeah, so then it took you easier for you to take his side, right? And then when she tried to discipline you, he undermined her authority by telling her, like you don't get to fix the children, you don't get to discipline the children, right? By telling her, you better fix yourself first because you're not a good mother, right? Essentially. And I apologize to everyone for the disconnection. So I lost a lot of questions that you guys posted. I know there was a lot of questions. And Dawn, thank you so much for sharing. Actually, Dawn, we're going to have you come on one of these events. We're going to do another event like this again soon in a few weeks. But yeah, thank you. And then Claudia, yeah, thank you, Samantha and Megan. I'm seeing the question now, so we're gonna make sure we pick up on that. Okay, so we talk about the alienating behaviors, and Shah just kind of started to share about the impact it did for us as adult children of parental alienation. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what does this do to you, the parental alienation situation, like what kind of impact it has on us. So Kyle, do you want to pick that up and address that? You're on mute, by the way. We can't hear you. And also, there was comment in the chat room earlier about the audio. Let us know if you can hear us properly now, because I know that there was some problem earlier. So please, yeah, let us know if you can hear us. Kyle, so go ahead.
Okay, so the long-term effects of my case of parental alienation I can see is periodical depression. Sometimes I'm just, I just fall into a pit and I don't know where it comes from, you know. Every now and then, I'd say now it's better, of course. For I'm 24, so it's been years of dealing with these recurring depressive phases and whatnot. Constant anger, yeah, depending. A lot of cases of parental alienation are made by narcissists as well. So that was my case, and I see the traces in my behavior, and I usually don't like that. So when I catch myself saying or doing something that sounds a bit off, sounds a bit like I'm too much of my high horse, or like anything like that, because it's all I've known for so long. But my relationship, well, my relationship now with both my parents is excellent because they're just great people, and we had this opportunity. But for a while, I didn't have a good relationship with my mother. In fact, until I've been living with my mother, or I've been reconnected for 8 years, but only 2 of those years my relationship is has been fair and free of any anger and free of any sentiments. So it takes a while for after reconnection. It took me a while to find myself in the relationship and hear all the stories and understand. But the long term effects is the one that hits me the most is the periodical depression. The it just comes and goes, and you start like pinpointing, like, oh, it could have been this, it could have been that, when in fact, it's something deeply rooted that affected you, and you know, disguised in common settings and in common problems. All of those feelings come back, and you just fall into the pit.
Why did you think it caused depression for you?
Um, well, I think I do my own research, right? I also go through psychological therapy. Why do I think causes depression? I think that confusion, the confusion of your feelings, once it's everything that once, well, actually better, once everything is so, distorted, you have to try to find your own path and your own truths, and those hurt. Those really hurt. So whenever you're about to find it, it's a rush of many emotions together, right? Whenever there is an event, whenever there is a situation that makes you go back to those years, and usually that happens through c- daily common activities, and you don't even know. So when things get hard because of your ongoing trauma, because of your underlying trauma, when things get hard, your plate's already full. My plate's always been full ever since childhood. I never had a day of peace. So whenever problems arise and ugh, things hit the fan, it's really depressive. It's really, for someone that's very emotional. I'm someone that's emotional, so it really hits. It used to hit me very hard. Now, now since I'm aware and all those things, it doesn't hit me as much. And, my story is over pretty much. I'm grown up. I'm independent. I live by myself and so on. Now is when finally I'm getting settled with that trauma. Not that I got rid of it, but I'm taming it to, livable levels.
Mhm.
So that's is such a hard thing to hear. Like you said, this thing that is really hit me. You said, I never had a day of peace. It's such a tragic thing for a child to grow up in that environment. And so you're going through depression, and it's still, I mean, you are one of the rare cases where the child recognizes the problem, and you reconcile with your mother, and you maintain a good relationship now with both parents. But yet, and so really you're one of the good cases. And you're so self-aware, and you've gone through therapy, you've gone through self-research, and you do a lot of self-reflection, and yet it's still having this long-term impact on you. You're still going through depression, you're still going through angers and all this stuff. And you look back, and anytime your past, went back into your past, you still get that sense of loss and suffering, and you're still questioning, right? Because this is the people that you love and trusted, and yet it's full of lies. And for you to realize that now, it's yeah, that's just horrific. So there's a lot of comment in the chat room saying about good for you, Kyle. Like Aviva said, Samantha said it's so insightful of you. Um, there's a lot of comments there. So yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Sha, you just started to talk about how it is really heartbreaking to recognize how much you lost in terms of the relationship with your mothers all those years. Do you want to like go more into the kind of impact it does for you?
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Are you
uh,
talking to me? Or, oh,
Oh
you're
yeah,
talking.
I don't actually. Kyle, did you want to add something? Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I thought I wasn't done, but I will
Yeah,
just.
no, go ahead. Go ahead and add it. Feel free. Yeah.
Um, well, my story is a bit longer. I was gonna start talking about my relationship with my mother, but you know what? Let Shah answer because I've had enough time for myself.
Okay, go. Okay, Sha, do you want to pick it up? Yeah, go ahead.
Um, yeah, when I was 30, I didn't recognize the parental alienation. I didn't recognize it until I was about 38, and I began to recognize it in my own marriage. For the most part, I was a go-getter. I was successful in everything. I excelled in everything, every job. Um, my relationships with men were not real good, even though on the outside they were very submissive, but on the inside they were very dominating, controlling, just like my father. Um, a lot of heartache. Um, my dad pretty much coached me through relationships, but it was a sick, like, go ahead and marry the guy. Sex isn't important, or, you know, you don't have to have communication with someone in order to have a marriage. And my sister went through the same thing. She ended up marrying somebody that she couldn't communicate with, and he didn't love her. And I ended up marrying a narcissist who had specific uh, a marriage game. I knew the rules to it, but only because they were unspoken. But I knew what I could do, and I knew what I couldn't do. Um, inside, I think later on in life, I questioned my ability to make decisions. Um, I wasn't able. I mean, I made decisions regarding my work and things like that, but I'm talking about personal decisions, because everything was just like nothing was stable. Nothing was concrete. Everything was, I questioned my father. I questioned his motives. I questioned my mom's motives to the point I just hated her. I hated her. Um, I eventually reconciled with her when I was about 38. there's a lot of anger. There was a lot of anger. But now what I'm faced with is the alienation from the rest of my family. So ever since my mom passed, that's how it's been. So now I don't have anybody. I don't have my dad. I don't have any of my siblings.
So
So
this is one of the questions that in the chat room, for example, Steve was asking about what happened when you reconcile with the alienated parents. So Sha was just talking about she just mentioned about once she reconnected with her mother and then later her mother passed, the whole family turned against her because she reconnected with her mother. They um, they they abandon you once you stand up, once you recognize what was wrong, with child case anyway. They abandoned her, they alienated against her, they just turned and became really abusive to her, and we'll talk more about it in a minute. But we're still kind of talking about the impact of parental alienation on the children. So Sha was just talking about how she felt like she couldn't trust, and this is a very common theme. Like we did an event just like this, maybe 8 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, with 3 other adult children of parental alienation, and they share the same thing. Because once you have gone through the amount of lies and manipulations, you started to question everything going on in your life, and it destroyed the relationship you have with anybody else because you couldn't trust, you couldn't be there for anyone because you started to question the motive of everyone around you, and you don't know who to trust anymore. And this is exactly what Sha was just saying about how it really damaged your ability to relate to other people as a human being. And then she also talked about how she lost so many years. I mean, by the time that she reconnected with her mother, she was 38. 38. So you got 38 years that she lost, that she could never get back with her mother. The relationship that should have been beautiful because there was nothing wrong with her mother, and yet she didn't get it all. And then her mother passed later, and so she really had a really short time with her mother. um, and in her case, she recognized the problem at least at one point. What about you, Haley? How has parental alienation affected you?
Well, I'm still kind of in the middle of it. We haven't come through it like at all. My brother, of course, or my dad, excuse me, tried to take me from my mom, of course, but I was able to pull away. But I'm still having to deal with my brother not being here all the time. And I have an awful relationship with my dad right now. I blame him, of course. And I constantly ask him, like, why are you doing this? Why can't mom be around my brother? Why can't I see my brother maybe twice a month? My mom hasn't seen him in almost a year. Excuse me. Right now, I deal with mostly from my dad. Hasn't been diagnosed, but I believe that he's a narcissist. I deal with a lot of personal things because of the way he's treated me. Growing up, me and my dad were very, very, very close. We were so close, in fact, that he pushed my brother away. My dad would come home from work and stay in the bathroom for however many hours, and my brother's only way of communicating with him was through the little crack at the bottom of the door. And my mom noticed that, and it ended up giving all of her attention to him. And when I noticed that she wasn't giving me any attention, I became resentful of my mom. And when I was 12 years old, I was probably in the worst mental state I had ever been, because I hated my mom so much for not loving me the way she loved my brother. But looking back, I notice now it's because my dad wasn't giving Johnny any type of affection at all. It was all about me. I was the one that played the sports. I was the one that went out and had we always joked that me and my dad were exactly the same in personalities, and my brother and my mom were the exact same in personalities, but I look just like my mom and my brother looks just like my dad. And we always thought, like, oh, it's so funny, but looking back, it caused my brother to do anything to have my dad's approval, affection, anything. and I didn't care for it because I had it. It was there. I wasn't worried about losing it. But as I became older and I started questioning why is mom suddenly acting crazy? Because I know she's not crazy. It's weird. It was totally strange that my dad would up and leave, and then my mom was in this she was depressed for 3 months in bed. She couldn't do anything, and I was the only one there, and I was like, Dad, like, why are you leaving me with her? Like, I love her, but I'm 16, 17. I shouldn't be the one having to take care of her. And I'm taking care of her. Meanwhile, he's asking me, hey, do you want to go get ice cream? Like, no, I have to stay home and take care of my mom who you damaged. And it became, I increasingly got angry at him, and I'm still very, very angry with him. And I've been to counseling, and they tell me like, oh, well, you need to have empathy for him. Like, most recently they're saying, oh, well, we think he might have autism. Like, he just can't pick up on social cues, and it's just all these excuses for him to do what he's done. And so, like, because of the relationship I have with my dad, I to this day I still get panic attacks. Well, like, the other day I had a panic attack while I was driving, and I had to pull over because I was freaking out. It like, I don't trust therapists anymore, because every time I go to see a therapist and tell them my story, they flip it like my dad really isn't as bad as as I see him. It's really just my mom being crazy and brainwashing me. But it doesn't make any sense. And so now I live with this confusion. Is everything my dad's telling me, is he right? Or is everything my mom telling me, is she right? And I have to figure out, as a 17, 18-year-old, how to manage my parents. I basically was forced to grow up. From, like, when I was 16 years old, I immediately had to grow up and learn how to deal with two parents, and how to transport my brother, and how to basically parent him for a short period of time.
That's awful. That's awful that you're so with Haley's situation, what she's experiencing is that she's being put in the middle, and she, even though she recognized the kind of behaviors that her father is doing to alienate her from her mother, she's being caught in the middle, and she had to manage this, and it destroyed the family, so that she didn't get to have a normal relationship with her dad. She had to choose. She didn't get to have a relationship with both of her parents, and then she also didn't get to have a good relationship with her siblings, because this divide is affecting everybody in the family. And then she herself, now as a child, have to manage both parents, and then she doesn't feel trust. She can't trust anybody, even the therapist, because people don't get this story. People don't understand this. This is a very unfortunate thing about parental alienation, is that there's no resources out there, and a lot of professionals don't get this. And so victims, when victims, as children or even as adults, go and talk about this with therapists, they don't understand this, so they can't provide you with the support that you need, and it's tragic. And she's suffering from anxiety and depression, and trying to cope with is normal. I mean, teenagers, it's already enough just being a teenager, trying to figure out your own identity, let alone having to deal with these adult problems. It's really, really tragic. So there's a lot of question in the room, in the chat room, about the moment that you recognize this, and we'll talk about this in a minute. I just wanted to mention though, if you guys haven't already, please subscribe to the mailing list on our website. It's victimtohero.com. We have a mailing list that we send out to give you a notification of events like this, and we're also going to be giving you more resources. We don't charge anything, so everything's free. So just subscribe to our mailing list. And then also, I wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you to someone, because we are working on a documentary film, and recently we went to Colorado to film the main portion for this documentary film, and we needed some help with some aerial shot. So a company called Moss Photography in Denver, they were amazing. They came and they helped us with filming the aerial shot at night. We had some shoot with the police department there that they helped us, and then also some daytime shoot. So I just want to take this moment to thank Moss Photography, Big Moss at Moss Photography. Thank you so much. And we have amazing shots from that that are gonna go into the documentary film. So thank you. And then okay, so let's continue with this. Now let's talk about how did you recognize, when did you wake up? What are the kind of things that made you wake up to this alienation situation? So Kaya, do you want to pick up with your case? You know, I know you said that you recognized this when you were 15. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it was funny because I mean it wasn't funny, but it's funny because when I was 15, I realized that everything was going down, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? My mother lived in Canada. I was living in Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil, and I was like, geez, man. So this person that told me that she was the absolute power in the world, now she's contradicting herself, and my truths are, they're conflicting with her reality. So I'm like, what is true, what is not? Right? Did my mom actually do all those things? Because once, at least to me, once I catch someone lying, everything else is just, is untrustworthy. So, and I have that. Being a Scorpio myself, I hold grudges. There is no way around it. No way around it. So, as soon as I realized that she was hurting me more and more, and if she was such a great person, like what was going on?
Yeah, you're
And
talking about your alienator, your grandmother.
yeah, talking about my grandma. So I was, I was living with her. I was under her care. I was the golden child. I was the only grandson being raised by her after 4 kids. Right? She's well off. She's got the money. She's got the life. So then I'm like, okay, I'm safe here financially, but in here I'm going insane. And I was like already going insane for about 3 years. So my stuff, the tough times really happened when I was first when I was 10. There was a custody battle, and the custody battle between my mother and grandma, where I chose my grandma. So I was manipulated to choose my grandma. So then 10, 11, 12, I, I was super confused. 13, I got deep into church, a segment of Pentecostal, a Protestant church in Brazil. It's called Universal Church. Anyways, so I got really deep into religion. Just to a year later, find myself out of it. So then after that, I just started straight up drinking. Drinking, smoking, trying to find escapes. 14-year-old, following the footsteps of my parents, which they did the same thing. Um, so then when I was 15, I'm like, something is wrong, and I'm gonna see my mom no matter what. Once I went to see my mom in Canada, which was a big fight. Also, I'm like, Grandma, can I go see my mom? She never gave a shit about you. La 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 la. You're not going. I'm like, well, I am. So I forced my way, any way I could, to hurt her, to make her just like kick me out of the house. So I drank in the school, got suspended for 3 days. I punched a guy in the face in school, suspended for more 3 days. So I was just doing things to like really get her to like just kick me out already. Stop being in my life. So when I was 15, finally my father released the authorization for me to travel abroad, because that's what was missing. So left, came to see my mom in Toronto, and basically we spoke for the first time about ourselves. We're like, so what's going on? All this that I've heard my whole life. And then after a conversation like this, that was step number one for me to be like, okay. But it took a major sacrifice on my part to, and it still takes, every small eureka moment that you go like, holy fuck, okay, holy, like this happened, and now I just had a realization. And there is a feeling that comes around whenever you like you feel yourself free of one more grill, one more grudge of this story. So but it always takes a sacrifice of your part. It took me at least a sacrifice where I just, I had to let go of my emotions. I had to let go of what was blinding me. And then, well, I started doing that very young. When Haley said she had to grow up super young, I totally feel you, girl. I had to do it, at the age of 12. I was already like, probably right now, even my hair's lost. Like, I'm 24. What's going on, right? So, but yeah, it took me sacrifice. So 15, I think I already drifted away from the main question, but we'll keep going. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So 5 years of living with my mom and treating her with all those, treating her accordingly to everything that I've heard for 16 years, which weren't fair things at all. So she suffered a lot, I suffered a lot, but it took a lot of sacrifice, understanding, patience throughout 5 years for, and persistence, and vision, until we finally like, okay, I think we're okay, and I think I understand you and you understand me.
Wow. So with Kyle, it's a long journey. So it started with him having some suspicion because he started to notice these things that his grandmother lied about his mother. So he had some suspicion and he was going through depression and he had started to act out, right? You started to drink, you started to fight at school, you start to misbehave. And then you wanted to go and see your mother no matter what, but they try to prevent you, and eventually you managed to go to your mother. So Kyle went to his mother. It's not the end, it's not the happy ending, not yet. He went to his mother and lived with her for 5 years, but in that 5 years he still treated his mother the way the alienator wanted him to do. The alienator had brainwashed him so much, told him that his mother was bad, was horrible. So even though he reconnected with his mother, he couldn't break out of that belief. He still treated his mother really badly for 6 years. 6 years. Reconnection of 6 years living with her full time before he finally wake up and going, whoa, this is wrong. I'm misbehaving. I'm mistreating my mother. She did not deserve to be treated this way. Those was all lies, and I'm gonna break out of this, right? So that's a very long journey, and we're talking about a very good case here, where he recognized it was something wrong. He was the one who stood up and fought to go and reconnect with his mother. He lived with his mother full time for 6 years before he finally go, okay. And talking about how deep rooted this sort of the brainwashing and the manipulation, that what it does to the children is amazing. It's so sad. Um, what about you, Sha? How did he recognize? Because you were the golden child. You were treated so well by the alienator. So how did you wake up? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Okay. When my father left my mother, I was 30 years old. He left her for my best friend. When I went to counseling, they were saying to me, well, he can't have an affair with you. You are the surrogate. So he confided in you instead of confiding in his wife. So I became I know this is odd. I became the surrogate wife. So he couldn't marry me. So he picked my girlfriend and married my girlfriend. Okay. So during the next 8 years, because I didn't recognize it for another 8 years, I tried to reconcile with my mom, but she kept saying, this is a lie, that's a lie. Well, the only thing is when you only have memories that my father would say, that's the only memory I have. So when someone tells me, well, that's a lie, well, that's basically saying I'm lying about my memory, and that's the only memory I had. So during those 8 years, I got counseling, and I got a lot of it. And I was in a church that, because all the other pastors that I ever went to would say, your husband needs to deal with you. You're the one that needs counseling. Okay. Not your father, not your husband, you. So I was always the one getting help. So I didn't have a good relationship with my dad because he was with my best friend. And I didn't have I didn't have a good relationship with my mom because she didn't believe me. And she didn't believe in my memories about her, which they weren't true. And so at the age of 38, my husband left me for my other best friend. They all worked in the same office with my dad. And then what happened was, because my father and I didn't have a good relationship, my husband went to live with my father and his wife and began to alienate me and my children. And I recognized it. That's when I recognized it. And so I went to my mom had worked at a church, and she said, there's this group and it's for abused women. I said, I'm not abused. Well, it's for abused women. You can only get referred in. And so she worked at this church, and so she referred me in. We had not reconciled yet. And so I got into this group and I got a lot of help. And I knew that I needed it, but this doctor, this counselor, he had 3 packets. One was leave, one was stay and cope, and the other one was plan. You had to go pick your packet. And at the end of you completing the packet, then you were ready to do anything and everything that you had to do, because it was completely planned out and there was no stone left unturned.
Yeah, I
So
remember we talked about this, but yeah, let's hold on to that. But I just wanted to, before we kind of get further from the question,
mhm,
summarize what happened with Shah in terms of when or how she recognized it. So with her case, the first thing that happened was that her father left her mother. So they were, the alienation happened while they were still together, still married, and then he cheated on her, and then he finally left the mother, and then he then went with Shah's best friend. He, went with the child's best friend and married the child's best friend. And then Shah still didn't recognize that. She was still in touch with her mother. But this is what happened to a lot of alienated parents, is that her mother denied everything that Shah was trying to say. So because Shah has been brainwashed with all these lies, so now Shah repeated it to her mother, and then her mother then got angry and said, "Well, these are lies. These are not true," and that didn't help at all with their relationship, because even though these are lies, they was the only things that the children knew. These are the things that the children was told, and the children trusted, and the children bought into these lies as truth. So because her mother just denied her and just said, no, those are lies, by denying it, it didn't help. So she couldn't take her mother's side immediately, even though they were still in touch. But then it continued until Shah herself was alienated from her children. That's when she woke up. So we have interviewed a lot of adult children of parental alienation, and we found that there are 3 main scenarios where the children woke up from parental alienation. One is some kind of crisis in their own life, where it could be it's a time where they're growing up, or it could be some situation with their own life. That's when they wake up, because when they're going through some kind of personal crisis or self-re-examination is when they start to question the stuff that's going on with their childhood, and that's when they wake up and they go, oh, this happened to me. 2 is it happened to them as a parent. So when they have their children and then they now being alienated, then that's when they wake up and go, oh, the stuff that's going on right now with me is what happened to my parents. This is what I did. And this is what happened with Shah case, is that she became alienated as a parent. And that's when you recognize it. And
yes,
and it's just not enough that it happened to you, but also you went through a lot of therapy, right? And the
yes,
same with Kyle. He went through therapy, and he also went through a lot of self-searching. He did a lot of research himself. He did a lot of reading. He was a very self-reflected person. So that's how he recognized it. What about you, Haley? How did you know that your father was trying to do this against your mother? How did you know? How did you recognize this?
Well, I mean, my as soon as my parents split up and my mom found out what my dad was doing behind her back, she immediately started doing research, and my dad was in my ear whispering, "She's crazy, don't listen to her." But I didn't. How would someone's research make them crazy? So I looked into it. I did my own research, and I think it started off mostly with me wondering why he wasn't being accountable for his part in my family falling apart. Basically, it wasn't that I noticed that he was alienating me or my brother from my mom. It was, why is he okay with the way my family is turning out? It started off with the things he did to my mom, and then taking me and my brother to an apartment, and then distancing himself from me after we had been so close. And I asked him, I said, why are we where we're at? What happened to get us to this point? And I asked him, I said, why are you not connecting with me the way we used to? Because we used to be so close. He goes, oh, well, I'm not an open book kind of person. Like, how? I'm 16, 17. How is that? That doesn't give me anything. That's not what I need. So it started off with me wanting him to be accountable for his part. And then my mom doing her research, and then my brother suddenly hating my mom and totally being like awful whenever he came over. It was me, my mom, my best friend, and my brother for a year, right when my dad moved out. And we had the best year. We went everywhere during the summer. We went to New Braunfels. We hung out. We went to the lake. We did everything together. And I want to say it was that year my brother said, Mom, when I grow up, I want to marry someone like you. And in a couple months, everything's changed. It was like a complete 360. Everything changed. Johnny suddenly was cussing out my mom, standing up against her to the point where I had to interfere. I woke up one morning and my brother's yelling at my mom, nobody loves you, go get a life, you're pointless, like, I hate you. And I walked in like, what the hell is your problem? Why are you talking like this to your mom? Like, that's totally disrespectful. And he was at the top of his bunk bed, and I grew angry, yelled at him, and I threw my fist over and hit him in the stomach. And he turned around and he kicked me square in the face. I flew off the bunk bed onto my mom, and she's crying, saying, "It's not him. It's not him." You just have to, you have to know it's not him. It's not who he is, and it's not who he's ever been. And your dad made him like this. And then I started asking my dad, why is Johnny only acting like this when he comes over to my mom's house? Why is everything totally okay? And then he goes to my mom and is totally different person. And I think that's when I realized, oh, my brother's being alienated.
Yeah, so with Haley's situation, this is the third scenario that I didn't touch on. I mentioned to you that there are three scenarios that we've done research and found when the children wake up. So the third scenario is when the alienator turn against the children themselves. And you may not think that that's possible, but it's actually happened quite a lot. Is that the alienator, because they themselves are not really nice people and they don't really care about the children that much, the fight between the alienator and you is about you. They hated you so much. It's not because they love the children that much. They hate you more than they love their children. And so at some point, and it's actually happened quite a lot, the alienator will turn against the children themselves. And with the case with Haley, she was the golden child. She was loved and cared for. They were very close. But then the father turned against her, and that helped her recognize what happened. She's suddenly going, what's going on? And then that's when she started to recognize that the kind of behaviors that going against her mother is really unjust and unfair. And she saw how the family got divided, and that's how she recognized this problem. So we address, what the alienating behaviors. We talk about the kind of impacts on the children. We talk about how you work up to the alienation. Let's talk about, this is a big question on parents' mind, is that what could have been done? What can the alienated parents, the victim parents, what can that parent do to help you reconnect? Is there something they should have said? Is there something they should have done? How do they reconnect? How do they fix the problem? So what are your thoughts on it, Kyle? What could have your mother have done to fix things earlier? And I mean, with your case, you talk about how your mother was very consistent for that 6 years that you lived with her. She, even though you abused her, you were very aggressive to her, you were turning against her, she was there consistently with you for 6 years, being kind and nice to you, and that's how you recognize that. But how could she have done differently to fix things earlier?
Well, I think it wasn't easy for both of us, and you know, she's had her resilience, and that helped. But there isn't anything on the books that can make it happen. I think that the only thing that can make this happen and the reconciliation go by is basically just wait. You know, I'm guessing I'm talking to the parents that are going through this right now, and you gotta always show that you love us. That's all. There is nothing that you can say. You just gotta show that you love, and you gotta do that, consistently and persistently until we find ourselves in the middle of this thing. My mother, she told me, like, she almost gave up, and we were in the car. I was 18, and she came around. She goes, like, honestly, last week it was so much that I'm giving up on Kyle. He just doesn't love me. As much as I try to make him happy, he doesn't love me. So you know it it just takes waiting, takes loving, it takes resilience. There is nothing that I can tell you that you can say that's gonna make your kid feel better. I just It wasn't like that for me, at least. You just gotta constantly just show love, show care, just always contradict. By doing that, you're gonna as a parent, you're gonna naturally contradict what the alienator has been telling you, you know, has been telling your kid about you.
Thank you. So what Kyle is saying is that what helped for his situation and his advice for the parents is that to always be there, to constantly show love, don't give up, be resilient, and just live up and show by actions that the lies are not the truth. You have to be consistently to show that you are the loving, available, good parent, and you have to be patient about it. It's not something that's gonna happen overnight. Because a lot of parents, I see there's this discussion of how do I get my children back? Well, the moment you get your children back is not the magic moment. The damage has been done. It's so serious. It's going to take a long time. So you have to be prepared for this long journey. It's not a button. It's not. That's not the end of the story. It's the beginning. If you did get your children back, it's the beginning. So be patient and always being there. What about you, Sha? What could have your mother have done? And I think you also told me about the kind of things that you asked your mother to have to do in order for you to reconnect, and it did help, right? So do you want to? And you're on mute, by the way. You're on mute. Yeah. Yeah. So with Sha, she actually shared with me privately before this about how she tried to reconnect with her mother. And go ahead. Yeah, I see that you're on mute now.
Okay. Between the age of 30 and 38, I had a lot of counseling. So when I recognized it going on with my own children, I knew how to respond to them. Okay. I knew how, and it was to validate their emotions, validate. So like when they would come to me and they would tell me what their father was saying, oh my God, it was a lie. And I wanted to say, that's a lie, but I knew that I couldn't do that because my mother had done it to me. And I knew I was going to reject her. I knew that they were going to reject me. So what I did is I would say, I am so sorry that your father is involving you as a child in an adult situation. You at your age should not have to deal with any of this. This is between adults. And for your father to bring you into this, especially with your grandpa and his new wife, I said, I just want you to know that I love you And when you're in the midst of that, if you can go do something else, I would tell them what they could go do. They could go out on the swing set. They didn't have to be around other adults. So my kids were 10, 7, and a newborn. That's when my husband left. So I was able to do that with them. And, you know, even though I ended up with my children, I still had it going on up until the time I remarried, and still do have some of it going on with one of my children. But when I reconciled with my mom when I was 38, I was able to go to her and coach her in what she needed to tell me in order for us to get together. And that was not to validate the memory, but to validate the pain and the emotional hurt and the scarring and the sting of memories that I had with her, just to comfort me and validate me. And that was, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Those were the things that I needed to hear. It wasn't that. And I would tell her, I know you don't want to validate the memory because it's not true. It's not true, because I'm going through it with my own children right now. So she was able to do that. And that's what's helped me. You know, that's what helped her. And so she, you know, of course we had a lot of issues to work through, because it'd been 38 years. It'd been, 35 years. And so when she passed, she didn't pass until she was about 82. And, with any new relationship, you're going to have trouble. But we were so grateful we had the time that we had. And I just want everybody to know not to give up on your children, just to stay focused, to identify with the sting, with the pain, give them choices, give them alternative, just give them choices, so that when they're in the situation that they don't have any control over, team up with the other child and say, come on, let's go do this, let's go do that. Because that's what I've done. I've helped other people, I've helped other people to say, take, show your children that they can team up as children and go do something else, so that they're not having to listen to what's going on, because it's painful. They don't want to hear what their mom's like, or they don't want to hear what their dad's like, because it's conflicting inside, and it causes so many wounds, and it tears you up. And
Yeah,
that's
I think that is so important. So what Sha shared, there are three things there, and one of the things Linda in the chat room to say, validating that emotion is so important. I wish I had known how to do that better. I was often caught myself trying to caught up in defending myself, and this is something that Sha pointed out. That there's three things that I noticed Sha talk about just now. One is that she herself went through a lot of therapy. So if you can get your children good therapy is a key, because a lot of therapists do not get this. They do not understand it. So you have to figure out good therapists to get your children in to good therapy is one key thing in reconnecting with your children. The other thing that she talked about there is to not deny your children, because your children are victim here. They are hurt, they are in pain, they've been told all these lies, and it's not about defending yourself. It's about making sure that your children are loved and knew that they are loved. So validate their emotion, not validating the fact, not validating the false lies, but to validate the children as themselves, as the children of the hurt that they experience. That's very important. So Sha was saying about how she told her mother is to stop defending yourself. Let me express my feeling. Let me be heard. So get your children to a point where they can talk to you and let them know that they are heard is very important. So that's the second thing. So therapy, the second thing is let them know that they are heard and validate them. The third thing that she mentioned is teach them some kind of skill so that they can handle when they're being put in situation like this. So, we have talked to therapists who talk about teaching the children to say, oh, don't talk to me about my mother, or walk away and do something else. Teach the children how they can cope when they're being put in this situation. It's not easy though. but definitely like if they can have some skills in and that definitely come with therapy. If you have good therapy who can teach your children how to cope with this sort of situation, it's going to be very helpful. So those are the three things that really has been really helpful for Shah. What about you, Haley? What have your mother has done, or what could have helped, or what are your advice for alienated parents?
So normally, like I think like Kyle said, the alienator is most of the time a narcissist, and his or her goal is to injure the other. They only want to see the other person burn, basically. And when you originally asked the question, my first thought was there was nothing my mom could have done. I it all happened so fast. My brother was swept out from underneath her so quickly that she didn't know what to do. She I don't know how she could have done anything different. But when my brother first started acting out, I told her, Johnny's being rude, Mom. Stop reaching out to him. Like, don't let him treat you like this. It's not okay. Like, you need to, there's no reason for any of this to happen. Stop reaching out. I basically told her to give up, and she didn't. And looking back, thank God she didn't. And she still hasn't. It's been almost 2 years, and she's like, I honestly can say I've never seen anyone more brave to sit there with her arms wide open for him and just take the beatings that he gives her. Mm-hmm. And she just sits there saying, I love you. It's okay. Like, you're going to come back, and I'm going to be here for you when you do. And it's going to be painful, and it is painful, but like, you're going to come back and it's going to be okay. She just sits there patiently waiting for him to come back while he's totally like basically beating her up. Like, she had to sit there and endure the nobody loves you, everybody hates you, nobody wants you, get a life, Mom. And she just has to pretend like it's okay and push through it while with her arms wide open saying, you're gonna come back, and I have to sit here and hope that you do, because if you don't, then the rest of this is really gonna suck. I mean, I don't know how she could do anything different. I don't know how, like, I really admire her bravery and her strength.
I think that's such a heartbreaking story. I mean, definitely. I think all three of you share the same thing, is for alienated parents to not give up. I know it's so hard, it's so painful, but really you are braver than you realize, and you're stronger than you realize. And you have to be there. You can't give up on your children. You have to be there no matter what. You have to recognize that your children are victims. So just like Haley was saying, her mother didn't give up, and she's still not giving up despite everything. And the good thing about her case is that her mother has done a lot of research herself. So she's so brave, and she's standing up no matter what. She's still there, even though her brother is still being alienated, severely alienated, but she doesn't give up. She's still there, letting him know that she's there, and she's there, and she's there no matter what he was doing, saying that she loves him and that she's going to be there for him to come back. And that is so important. I mean, we see so many questions in the chat room about how the court system failed. I mean, the system fails so badly. And I mean, this conversation would never end. I mean, we will talk about that kind of questions, that kind of topic, but really to talk about, as parents alone, we have very limited options. There's not much that we can do other than just loving our children and being there. There's questions there about what to do if you have no contact at all with your children. So there are a few things, and I mean, it's not really a lot. We have an interview with Dr. Joshua Coleman, who talked about how you can try to reconnect with your children if you have no contact at all, especially with adult children. what can you write and how often you write to your children. We also have an interview with Dr. Amy Baker, who also talk about similar thing. How do you get in touch with your children if you don't have contact? The advice that they have is to be consistent. Like set a time, let's say Saturday at 10 a.m., and do that consistently every week at that time, and be casual about it. Don't get heavy loaded. Don't get too emotional. Something casual. I went for a walk and I thought of you. We went to the beach, or we cooked a cupcake, or whatever. Some casual thing to keep in touch, because the child actually get registered in the child's mind that that's the time that you contact. And even if the child doesn't respond to you, it does something. It shows that you're still available, and it does work. And Dr. Amy Baker talked about how when one of the parents eventually gave up, and how tragic it is for the child, because even though the child denied the parent the whole time, when that contact stopped, it actually did do damage to the relationship. So even though you get rejected, stay in contact no matter what. And the other thing that we would say, and we talk to a lot of adult children about this, is that we are at a digital age. We are at the time where the children all have access to the internet. So have a bigger digital footprint. Have your Facebook, have your website, whatever. Have a bigger footprint, because your children will look for you. Because today and age, even when they reject you, they are going to be curious. They are going to look you up. And be positive. Have a positive digital footprint. It doesn't have to be about your children, but you want the children to have something to look up to. They need to be able to be proud of you. They need to see that you are a whole person, not a damaged person, the way that the alienator portrayed you. I think we really way over time, but I just wanted to go through all the three of you, and just to see, is that the last thought? Is there anything else that you want to add before we close out? Kyle, do you want to pick it up?
Yeah, well, it just takes long, guys. I'm sure, like, throughout this journey, I can tell that I was a very lucky person for having noticed that at an early age. I know a lot of you guys that are watching there, you have deeper issues. I mean, you have worse conditions than my story. But just hang in there. If you have the dream of reconnecting with someone you love, and that's actually a right. You have the right of being connected with your offspring. That's a no-brainer. But if that was stripped away from you, just hang in there, because there is a very, very valuable lesson at the end of all of this. And it's only gonna make you and your children a better person, better people.
Yeah. What about you, Sha?
My mom never gave up. Never. I was so awful to her. Every gift she ever gave me, it didn't matter if I was 10 or 15 or 16. I did everything I could to break it, get rid of it, throw it out. Even up to the age when I was, an adult, raised, I had my own children. I didn't appreciate anything that she'd done. And now I'm grasping. I'm going through all her files and everything, and finding all the letters she wrote me. And I want parents to know not to give up, just to keep pursuing. And like I've told people to tell them, I've told people, just create a new life and make a life so that when they come home, they've got a castle to come home to, because they're going to be broken and they're going to want to see that you made it. And you're not like what the alienator has said you are. You're nothing like what they said you are. They don't want to hear you crying. They don't want to hear you bad mouthing the other parent, because they already hear that. My mom, she didn't know until I was able to coach her. So my mom never gave up. She never gave up. She became a missionary, and she went all over the world. She went all over the world, and she did what she wanted to do, and she lived her life. I would say you need to get a life, because nobody loves you. Nobody in this family loves you. I wasn't speaking for my other siblings. It was just something for me to tell her that I knew would kill her. But it didn't kill her. It didn't kill her. And that's you gotta stay connected and stay in there and committed, even though they reject you. Don't let it go here. Don't let it go here, and don't let it go here, no matter how hard it gets.
Thank you so much.
Like Haley's mom. There's so many times, you know, my husband says to me, how can you stand there and allow him to do this to you? This is my son, the way he treats you. And I said, it's like a shell. It's like this big shell that comes over me, and it's like just armor. And I don't hear what he's saying. I know what he's saying, but I don't believe what he's saying about me. So I look at it as, all I can do is pray for him and let him spew, because I don't fight back with him. I don't tell him off. I don't do any of that. I'm like Haley's mom, that just let them have their say, and they need to get it out. So anyway, that's my advice.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Do we have time for that? You said that you were alienated from your siblings as well. Do you have any advice for me that I should use to get my brother?
I'm alienated from my siblings after my mom died. So she was 82. I'm 64 right now. So it's been about 3 years now. I just try to reach out. I'm doing the best I can to reach out to them, no matter how hard it gets. And then I make sure that I've done everything in my power to reconcile. And then once you do that, you're free. Then it's up to them. So if you can do what you need to do in order to take the blame off of you, because there is no blame on you. This is something that's happening to you. It's not something that you're being blamed for, because he's alienated you just like he's alienated his mother. Okay, so if you can come to a point where you're not fighting with him, and those are just words, just like you want your mom to do, okay, you tell him, I want to reconcile with you, but if you're not at that point, I'm here whenever you're ready. And be like your mom, because there's no difference in what he's doing to you as to what he's doing to your mom. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a comment in the chat room about how, I think it was Vin that said, I disagree with parents just taking on the abuse by the children. I just want to clarify that a little bit. If you have a different perspective, if you recognize first is that your children are victims. They are victims of abuse, and what they are doing is not their own actions. They are being influenced. So the first thing is, if you could take that perspective, then you will be able to look at your children with compassion, and you will be able to look at the way they behave and the way they are a little bit, like you'll be able to handle that a little bit better. That's one. The second thing is, it doesn't mean that you stop being a parent. You still have to be the parent and pointing out what is right and what is wrong. It still doesn't stop you from setting boundary and setting expectation of what you expect your children to behave as a child. You do have to take into consideration that you are in a sort of a very sensitive situation, that you don't get to just be normal parent and just discipline the children the normal way. You have to sort of dance around things a little bit, but it doesn't mean that you stop being the parent. You still have to point out when things are wrong, and you still have to stand up to yourself for yourself, and you still have to stand up against your children when they misbehave. I'm not saying that we should just take the abuse as it is, but if you have a compassion lens to look at your children as victims of abuse, then you can handle your children a little bit better, and you can actually show your understanding to help your children overcome that a bit better. It's not easy. I'm just saying, I just want to clarify with those 2 points. And Haley, so what do you have something, what's the last thing that you wanted to share with parents?
Basically what everybody else has said, it's don't give up. It really hurts, and it there's a lot of pain, and I honestly believe that you will never ever be the same. My I my mom will never ever be the same person she was before. The abuse she endured with my dad when they were married alone has given her so many issues that she has to deal with, and then adding on the fact that he basically ripped my brother from her. That's a pain that I could never imagine. But it takes a different type of strength. I don't know how she's able to do it. I don't know if I could do it. It the pain I'm going through alone, I it there's a lot of pain that I'm dealing with, and I don't know how she's able to deal with her pain. So it just having strength and not giving up, no matter how much you want to.
I have one.
Go ahead, Sha.
I guess this is kind of a advice to the parents, between the alienator and the one that's alienated. Basically, there is no co-parenting. There is no co-parenting, and the alienator will make it look like you're co-parenting, and your verbiage is, I want to just co-parent. You got to get that notion out of your head, because they have no intention of co-parenting with you, none at all. And for us to write letter after letter after letter trying to get this across, get that across, my letters were never read. They weren't even opened. So, my son found them in the glove box, and they were still sealed, never opened. So that's just, we can't you can't work with a narcissist. It's all about control. And if you get to a point, I mean, my husband's game of marriage was, and I just asked him a couple of years back, do you still believe in the game of marriage? Because he used to tell me, when people get divorced, is because they stop playing the game of marriage. And a couple of years back, I asked him if he still believed in the game of marriage. And he said, yes. And I said, well, I know the rules are unspoken, but can I guess your rules? And he said, yes. And I said, so I can think what I want. I can feel what I want. I just can't do what I want or say what I want. Are those the rules? And he said, yes, those are the rules. Do you still believe them? Yes, I do. So for a narcissist, that's pretty much sums it up. You can't say or do what you want. As soon as you fight back, there's something that rises up in them, and you get the real thing.
It's all about control. Yeah, the alienators want to get back at you. They want to control. And I really appreciate all the advice that everyone have to not give up, to be aware, to be self-aware of your situation. You are not in a normal situation. There's nothing idealistic about this. It's a very different situation. Anyway, around the same time next week, we have another event where it's a happier story. It's a reunification story. So next week, we're going to have a number of parents who have successfully reunited with their children who come on and share their story. So I hope you join us.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, please join our mailing list on our website, victimtohero.com. This event is recorded on our Facebook page, so Victim to Hero Facebook page, and I'm sure Kyle and Haley and Shah will be checking out the video because there's so many questions, and I know we didn't address everything, and I know Kyle been responding to some of the parents. So, feel free to post more questions, and if they have a chance, they will check it and they will respond to you, and hopefully that will be more helpful. And thank you so much for being here. Please share the event so that other parents can actually check this out as well. And thank you so much, you guys, for joining and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Petrie.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.